please welcome to the stage Marshall Kozlov and Senator Ruben Gallego.
Hi, Senator. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bueno. Thank you for having me.
So this is billed popularly as a centrist convening, but I'm not sure I would describe you as a centrist. How would you sort of describe yourself at a brand identity level with those different things?
So I honestly don't, it sounds like such a political thing. Like, I don't really go by a label. And look, it just depends. Like, sometimes I do ascribe to different political views. Like, for me, like, I interact with politics the way I grew up with politics. It was never surrounded by left, right, or center. I grew up in an immigrant family, working class Latinos. Like, we didn't think about that. We thought about, like, what was the end result of the politics and the policies, and how is that actually going to affect our lives. And the way that I do things, the way that I do my politics is, like, I kind of center everything around that first. And if it ends up being ascribed to what it is, then ascribe what it is. I mean, politics has changed a lot. Many years ago, some of the things that I thought were very much tried and true to kind of being your normal kind of progressive Democrat is now moving to the left or moving to the right. And for me, I just stick to where I know, stick to what I remember growing up in the environment that I grew up in, and that just makes it more authentic for me than trying to kind of chase the rabbit.
So our big meta theme is the importance of story and narrative and how it relates to you as an elected official. And I would just be curious, can you describe that rooted identity that you grew up in? Because, like, lots of politicians could say that, but that could lead you a bunch of different directions. And if we think about a fashionable word right now, it's heterodoxy. Lots of heterodoxy in your background, right? Like, you are talking about $20 minimum wages, sectoral bargaining, but you're also rejecting Latinx before it was cool to do so. Yeah. So, like, there's a lot there. But I think it's easy just to sort of say you're heterodox and grab bag a bunch of things, and then it doesn't cohere. So, like, what's sort of pulling this all together then?
Well, I don't start with even using that word heterodoxy at all. Look, I mean, like, my story and my narrative is actually, I think, more common to this country than not. I was born to two immigrants. We were living the American dream, and then we suddenly did not. My father's construction company went under. He started selling drugs. My mom had to basically rescue the family. We lived, in a shitty apartment. I slept on the floor until I went to college. My first bed was my dorm room bed, right? And the whole time that was all going on, what I was focusing on, what my family was focusing on, was still this strong belief in the American dream, right? We were told, and my mom told me, my grandfather told me, everybody around me told me, like, what you're going through sucks right now, Ruben, but this is America. Work hard, study hard, don't get in trouble, you're gonna succeed, right? And the whole time I was going through all that stuff, the whole time I was thinking about was not like, I really need a social program to get my family out of here. Mind you, I was. We were on the free lunch program, all four of us. And if it wasn't for the free lunch program, me and my sisters would have missed some breakfast and some lunch, because when you're poor, you're poor. But what I was thinking the whole time was that I need to do whatever I can right now to make sure I put my family in position to get the hell out of here and make my family rich and successful. I didn't think about it in any concept of, like, liberal or Democrat. I didn't think about, like, trying to just make buys. I thought that the American dream told me, work hard, you're going to be able to succeed, and you're going to make your family rich and comfortable. And that was it. And that's been my motivation my whole life in terms of politics, is to make sure that the little Ruben Gallegos of the world, or the Alejandra Gallego, or the Lisa Gallego, or the Laura Gallego, or my mom, Elisa Gallego, all have that hope and that belief. Because it wasn't ever guaranteed to me either, right? I never had any concept of the idea that Ruben is going to succeed no matter what, because someone's going to hand it to me. I just knew that I needed to have the opportunity. And I remember being the most frustrated was when I would try to work hard, and especially when you're getting closer to your junior, senior year, you have to take all your exams. I would still be working at night, at the hot dog stand, the pizza shop, and still trying to study from ACTs and SATs. My frustration wasn't the fact that I didn't think I was going to succeed. My frustration was the fact that I didn't think that I had the full opportunity everyone else had. And for me as a Democrat, and for someone I think who's trying to bring the Democratic narrative back, is that we need to be that party that gives the opportunity to that young working class Latino, or that black man, black woman, or that white man, white woman who also now feels disaffected. Until we do that, until we actually show that we're the party of opportunity, that shows that we're going to fight for you to have a chance to succeed, and also not demonized by the fact that you're going to be successful, we're always going to be branded as these others that I think makes it easier for us to really separate us and not get the votes we need to win.
So something I'm trying to push here in all my work is that if we're looking at those disaffected people, we don't just think in terms of like, here's my 10-point policy plan, or here are a collection of polls that we pick and choose from in order to sort of like talk to them. I think you need to actually root that in a narrative and a story, at least internally. This isn't like the op-eds you need to write, you just have to have that. So like, why is that young black man alienated right now? Why is that young Latino man alienated? Like, what do you see going on if you were to sort of articulate what the past like decade or so has been like for them?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it's not a black Latino. I think it's a man thing. Men aren't doing well in this country at all, especially young men. And, I'm raising one right now. Maybe he's too much on his iPad right now, to be honest. He's right over there. It's hard to raise boys in this country. And I have two, and I have a beautiful 3-year-old daughter. And I'm actually more worried about raising my boys than my girls. Because statistically speaking, boys aren't doing well in this country. Right? They're not going to college. They're not, getting into constructive, relationships at all. Higher amount of drug use, higher amount of suicide. All things are just not looking good. And as a society, we haven't responded at all to them. We've actually kind of ignored it. We've actually accepted that, these men are toxic, and whatever happens to them is kind of part of an extension of them being toxic. And I don't know where it became kosher for us as Democrats to give up on 50% of our population. It doesn't matter who they are, right? We should never do that, whether they're men, women, whether they're black men, Latino men, or white men. But we kind of have just kind of given up. We don't talk about them as a group and try to actually figure out what we should even be trying to do to help them, be better. And some of the stuff, for example, is just also lack of male role models. After my father left, I had to go and kind of seek out male role models. And luckily, in my Latino world, I had aunts, uncles, cousins, and then like Dios Diaz, and then like, extensions of that. I had like working class men. I would go to construction sites with them. I'd go to work with them. I learned from other men how to be a good role model, how to try to be a good father. But even now, those avenues for boys are just almost non-existent. And where they used to find are almost non-existent. There aren't as many male teachers as there used to be. It's almost impossible for you to do any extracurricular sports. Who has kids right now that are above the age of 10 or 11? Can you raise your hand? How hard is it to get in any type of organized sports right now, extracurriculars? It's expensive. It's time-consuming. Back when you were growing up, if you want to put your kid in Little League, you would just go down the street and you'd go to Little League, right? Now, like, the amount of boys that are in organized sports is even harder and harder. It's more expensive to put your kid in, and it's more time-consuming. So even, these boys that should have role models in different spheres aren't seeing their role models. And so where do they see men for the first time is sometimes on this, different platforms that are showing some really bad examples of who they are. How do we mess up as Democrats is that we don't even, again, try. So one of the things that, for example, we did on our campaign when we ran in 2024 is we did a lot of very men-oriented, specifically men-oriented events to try to talk to them to actually show that, hey, we actually care. Right? We had boxing matches, we had rodeos, I went to lowrider shows, I went to pinstriping, which is, God, there's a lot of white people here. It's like basically using your hand to basically like specifically detail cars on lowriders, which are very expensive vehicles. Even when reaching out to black men, we still don't even do that. We talk about it, and we think because we go to a black church on a Sunday that now we're reaching out to black men, but we aren't ever really talking about their needs, their wants, or what they want to go in the future. And we just need to actively do that. I'll give you one example of how bad this is. There was one CBC member who was asking me advice, and I said, one of the things you should think about doing throughout your whole district, it was a Black and Latino district, but you should do Father Day appreciation lunches and brunches the whole time. It's like, ooh, I don't know, that could get controversial. I'm like, why? It's not controversial when you do Mother's Day appreciations. And he just didn't understand why he had the icky feeling to it. There should be no icky feeling. We should appreciate men and what they do in society, especially those that are trying to do the best they can, much as we appreciate any other sector of our society. But the reason I think we are losing men is because we are ignoring them. And they feel it, they see it, they hear it. And sometimes when we do talk about them, we talk about them as if they're inherently bad and toxic by nature, and then we're surprised that they don't want to listen to us on any of other policy ideas.
So I think you just did something that can be difficult for the type of politicians who are on this stage, which is like find a clear, articulated way that the status quo doesn't.
Oh, that wasn't articulate, to be clear, but that's just my thoughts, yeah.
There was a coherent paragraph or two. That's how low our standards are right now. So basically, though, I guess what I worry is, how do you engage in that sort of experiment, like at a thought level, while also like not playing small ball? So like, if we're looking at sort of what's fueling a lot of populism, and like let's put aside 2025, 2026 in terms of the actual Trump administration, but let's think of like 2024, the campaign, right? Like lots of energy, lots of anti-status quo, and it felt big. And if you read Richard Reeves's work, the Boys and Men,
I've done some talks with them.
It gets very specific. Like we need to sort of start men at different times of the year, and then to your point around sports, like we could sort of make it so that U14 soccer does this, but it feels small.
It is small.
So what's the big?
Well, the big is like, if we were talking about men specifically.
Yes, but you could also extrapolate that because this.
Well, look, I mean, here's the big is this. There are men and women of my generation that remember their parents growing up being able to have steady jobs, be able to spend time with their kids, not feel the stress about it, being able to save for retirement, send their kids to college. There are people, I'm 46, there are people just younger than me that still are living at home with their parents, have no chance and hope of a house, do not have the opportunity to have a steady relationship, and are looking at the future, and they are fucking freaking out because they don't know what is coming. They know that AI is about to hit. What does that mean to them? Am I going to still be able to get a job in the future? Am I still going to be a provider for my family? For men, I think psychologically, men want to feel like they are providers or protectors. And right now, society makes it very difficult for them to do that. Just on the ability for them to actually provide for their family, have a job, bring economic stability, get a house. That is very difficult to do that. So if we want to actually think big, and like actually move people to actually be motivated to do anything, we actually have to call, I think, to that basic want, right? Like I think there should be, to some degree, a housing guarantee for young families. Doesn't mean it's gonna be a great house. It doesn't mean it's gonna be, a McMansion. You are probably gonna have a starter mortgage, but no one has said, like, you know what? If you are a working family and you have clean credit, you're gonna get a mortgage, right? Why are we afraid to say that? For some reason, that somehow has just run away. I think we're going to have a lot of crazy stuff's going to happen with AI. I know there's a lot of conversations about UBI. I'm not necessarily against it. But why haven't we thought about, like, you know what? The government's going to guarantee you're going to have a steady job if something happens, right? And you're going to make sure that you're going to use that time to retrain yourself. We're not really answering to people's fears right now, nor are we actually even answering to their wants or to their desires. We're just kind of like muddling along and hoping that we're kind of the better option than the other side. And the other side at least sells fear better than we do. We don't sell fear, we don't sell hope, we just kind of hoping that we are the default winner in this whole conversation.
Something I'm curious about then is, as you said, you started by pointing out you are not interested and don't think in labels, but you've also talked about the Democratic Party. And a challenge for a lot of these labelless movements and people that other folks in this room have pointed out is that there's a gap between you as an individual doing your own thing and the broader Democratic Party, right? So one of the things you said, like, here's my vision for the Democratic Party. We all need to do this exactly the way I do it in Arizona. So how should people in this room think about this awkward balance?
Well, first of all, stop overthinking. We way overdo that in so many regards. Number two, everyone is a brand ambassador, and you can't be worried about whether you fit their brand. I'm sorry I have to go back to this, 2024 election, but I had so many, I was running for 2 years, right? And we had a lot of these examples. And we were trying to do different things, and we actually would have pushback, Democrats aren't known for that, right? I got louder. Democrats aren't known for being, masculine. Democrats are known for being pro-security. And so we would have pushback from DC consultants. I think Chris Cooper's in here. He's not one of them. Good job, Chris. Thank you. Chris was my mail guy. You owe me a drink now. But Chris was involved in these conversations, right? And there was a lot of kind of DC mindset BS where it's like, you can't say you're this because Democrats are that. I think it's important that even if there is this national brand, whatever it is, most of that is actually done by you eggheads here, just to be honest. The everyday voter is not engaged in politics at all. They're not even engaged in politics in election year up until probably the last 3 weeks. They will have a certain vibe of what they feel about the politics of what's going on and what they feel certainly about a party and certainly what they feel about you as a candidate. But you can actually create your own brand. And I'm not just bragging about me, but in Arizona, you have seen Democrats be winning because we've branded ourselves with our own type of politics, right? And Arizona has 300,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. And we're winning statewide all the time. We're winning hard races because we don't wait for the national brand to change. We create our own brand, our own personality, so people know what they're voting for. I think this idea that there's going to be this grand gathering of geniuses that's going to end up changing the brand of the Democrat Party is not going to happen. It needs to happen on the individual level, and it needs to happen because if you want to win, and that's half the battle is that Democrats need to actually want to win and then do the things you need to do to win. And sometimes that will be off-brand, quote unquote. Sometimes you'll piss off your own base, but they're going to be very happy when you win.
I wonder if when it comes to brand, you're underestimating the power of an aggressive vision, an aggressive story, and specific leadership in the sense that Bernie and Trump both definitely changed the brand of the Republican Party in Trump's case, and then Bernie's case when it came to democratic socialism. So I just worry that we just hear this consistent story that focuses us more on the individual and just underprice the ability of leadership, movement building, and directed focus. So what will be your response to that?
Well, it only works for certain people, right? Trump could be the only person that could try to sell, our national, a nationalistic industrial policy because he's a businessman, right? If it would have been some other kind of Chamber of Commerce Republican, I think people would have been like, oh yeah, he's just trying to sell us down, sell us out. And next thing you know, all our jobs are gonna go overseas, right? The fact that he was this businessman, this brash businessman, made him believable. The fact that he was a New York Republican / Democrat, people trusted him on issues of choice, on LGBT issues, right? If it was Mitt Romney trying to do the same thing, it wouldn't work, right? If Bernie Sanders had been a run-of-the-mill Democrat, from New York City, who used to be a, corporate lawyer and now is suddenly becoming, a socialist, it wouldn't sell, right? So the narrative has to actually follow the authentic messenger. And as much as Trump is full of BS, at least the people that were looking for that message, it matches. Yes, you can lead a movement with personality and with policy, but it has to actually be aligned with an authentic messenger, or else it just won't land. And I think, you're going to see 2028 elections where I think you're going to see a lot of people trying to do that, both Democrats and Republicans, and I think everyone's going to anticipate it's going to have the same impact that Bernie had and that Trump had, and it's just not going to land. And I think because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be inauthentic in what they're doing and how they're saying it.
So the think tanker in me needs to defend overthinking and the sort of egghead side of the audience.
Well, you got to make some money. Yeah.
No, for sure.
I'm
here on my own.
How do you call those donors, right? But no, look,
Well,
don't
just
get me wrong. They do
re-
matter though, like because like sometimes, it's the think tanks that come out with these great policies, but they don't know how to sell it, and that's when you come to the people that know how to talk about it and know how to actually really materialize it to like everyday people. That's when that's a great kind of combo.
Well, and this is what I'm curious about, though. I'm curious how you do your thinking, because I think my concern
It's very
here
scary.
is- my concern here is that I don't like all the talk about polling. Because from my perspective, you did not need a poll to tell you that Latinx didn't work. You were rooted in your community.
I did have a poll. It's called my aunts, my uncles, my sisters. Yeah.
So for most people who aren't coming from your background, though, the polling saying that was actually cool, or the group that comes in and says it actually works, is actually a shortcut around that thinking. So I guess when you're outside of your own experience, the only answer I have is just like podcasting and talking to people about it. But as you're thinking about this as a senator and understanding that polling in of itself could lead you in weird directions, like at this WelcomeFest last year, the concern was that immigration was a net negative for Democrats. Not in terms of like we have to go all the way to abolish ICE, but like the vibe shifted very, very quickly. So I'm just trying to really push thinking. So how do you think about these things when they pop up?
Well, look, you got to be a leader, and you have to figure out when the information that's coming into you is good information and when it's not. And you have to also be willing to make mistakes. And we as Democratic elected officials are very prone to trying not to make any mistakes to the point that we don't actually move at all. And when we move, it takes us forever to move. And if we mess up, oh my God, we pull back and then we wait 3 more weeks and then we try to go again, right? For me, I take all different approaches to this, right? It's like I consider myself more of like a mixed martial arts guy, right? Do I look at polling? Sure. When I think the polling is right, like I'll go by it. When I think it's off because my gut's telling me off, then I say, you know what? I think the polling's off. I'm not going to listen to it. And when I'm wrong, then I blame my staff. No, just kidding. But when I'm wrong.